She stood there, arms crossed, smirking as the boy cried on the ground. The treehouse he and his father had built last summer was nothing but broken wood and nails scattered across the yard. Karen had dragged a saw across the supports and kicked, until the whole thing came down right while the kid was inside. His screams had barely faded when she shouted, "That's what happens when you break HOA rules. No ugly structures in my neighborhood." I rushed over, heart pounding, lifting my son into my arms. His knee was bleeding, his hands trembling, but Karen didn't care. She pulled out a piece of paper, something she had clearly printed herself, and shoved it at me. "Violation notice. You'll be fined $5,000 and forced to remove this junk from your property." I clenched my jaw, trying to stay calm. "This is my land. You don't get to touch my house or my child." But Karen wasn't done. She dialed her phone and barked, "Yes, I need deputies out here. We have a trespasser, a dangerous man with an illegal structure. He's threatening me and a minor." My stomach twisted. She was flipping the story on me, right in front of my son who was still crying in my arms. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars rolled up, lights flashing. Karen ran toward them, waving her arms like a victim. "Officers, arrest him. He's violent. He's refusing HOA orders." I stood frozen, holding my injured boy, watching the deputies step out, their hands hovering near their holsters. And then one of them looked at Karen, and his eyes narrowed. "You again?" he muttered. The air shifted. Karen's smirk faltered, for the first time. Karen froze for a second, then quickly plastered on her fake sweet smile. "Yes, officer, it's me again. This man is dangerous. He built an illegal structure, and his child was inside when it collapsed. He's reckless. Someone needs to stop him." I tightened my grip on my boy who was still shaking. "She cut it down," I said firmly. "She took a saw and destroyed it while he was inside." One deputy turned to Karen. "Ma'am, did you touch the structure?" Karen laughed nervously. "Of course not. Why would I? I was only enforcing HOA rules. We have strict policies, and he's been ignoring them for months." She shoved the fake violation notice into the officer's chest. "Here, proof. This is official." The deputy glanced at the paper, then frowned. "This isn't an official HOA document. It doesn't even have a seal or signature." Karen's face tightened, but she quickly snapped back. "That doesn't matter. I'm the acting president of the HOA, and my word is the rule here. You can't let people like him ruin our neighborhood." The second deputy's jaw clenched. He turned his body camera toward me and asked, "Sir, do you have any footage of what happened?" Karen whipped her head toward me, panic flickering in her eyes. "He doesn't have anything. He's lying," she barked, her voice cracking. I met her glare and said quietly, "Actually, I do." Karen's smile vanished. The deputy stepped closer. "Show us." I set my son gently on the porch and pulled out my phone. I already had the backyard cameras up, recording everything from the moment Karen marched in with her saw. The deputies leaned over my shoulder as the footage played, Karen cutting the beams, the treehouse wobbling, my son screaming, and then the crash. Every second was crystal clear. Karen's face went pale. The first deputy slowly looked at her and said, "Ma'am, this isn't a code violation. This is a felony." Her mouth fell open. "What? No, I was just doing my duty. I was protecting the neighborhood. He shouldn't even be here." The deputy snapped his handcuffs from his belt. "You just admitted to destroying property and endangering a child. You're under arrest." Karen's fake authority crumbled in an instant. She stumbled backward, shaking her head, pointing at me desperately. "You don't understand. He's not who you think he is. He's—" But the cuffs clicked around her wrists before she could finish. Karen thrashed against the cuffs as the deputies led her toward the cruiser. "You idiots! You don't know who he really is. He's dangerous. He's lying to you all," she shouted, her voice shrill and cracked. One deputy shoved the car door open, but before she was pushed inside, Karen twisted around and screamed, "Check his records. You'll see what he's hiding." I stood silent, holding my boy close, my jaw locked. The deputies glanced at each other uneasy. One of them lowered his voice and asked, Sir, is there something we should know? Karen's laughter turned wild. Oh, you'll find out. He's not just some poor dad with a treehouse. He's got a past. The deputy looked at me, almost expecting me to crack. I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into my wallet and pulled out a leather badge holder. The gold emblem gleamed under the porch light. Deputy Sheriff, off duty, I said quietly. The air went still. My son looked up at me, eyes wide, as the deputies straightened instantly. Karen's jaw dropped, her face draining of color. You're lying, she hissed, her voice shaking. You can't be. But the first deputy cut her off. Ma'am, you just tried to have a sworn officer arrested on his own land, and you put his kid in danger. He shoved her down into the back seat with no patience left. Karen's mask cracked completely. Her voice turned frantic, desperate. He's tricking you. He's not one of us. He's hiding something. The other deputy gave me a cautious look. Sir, you don't have to say anything, but she's not wrong. People in this neighborhood have been nervous since you moved in. Maybe it's time to clear the air. I sighed, staring at Karen pressed against the cruiser glass, her eyes still wild with spite. She's right about one thing, I said, slowly. I do have a past, but it's not what she thinks. Karen froze, her breathing heavy, her eyes locked on me. The deputies leaned in closer, waiting, and I finally spoke. Before I wore this badge, I trained federal units, people Karen wouldn't last 10 seconds against. Karen sat in the back of the cruiser, her wrists bound tight, but her smirk was slowly returning. She leaned against the glass, eyes locked, on me as if she hadn't lost it all. Then, with a sudden calmness, she said to the deputy, I want my one phone call. The officer sighed. You'll get it when we book you. But Karen wasn't panicking anymore. No, she was smiling. That same smug smile she wore when she saw my son crying, and that chilled me more than her shouting ever did. An hour later at the county station, Karen finally got her call. She grabbed the phone with shaking hands, but her voice was steady, too steady. It's me, she whispered. Yeah, I've been arrested, but listen, it's him, the one we talked about. He's here, he's dangerous. Do something before he exposes everything. The deputy supervising her frowned, trying to catch the name, but Karen turned her back and kept her words low. When she hung up, that sly grin spread across her face again. Back at my house, I was tucking my son into bed, thinking it was finally over, when headlights swept across my driveway. A sleek black SUV rolled up, darker than night, windows tinted so heavy you couldn't see inside. My chest tightened, the doors opened, and 3 men stepped out. Not neighbors, not deputies. These men moved with precision, shoulders squared, eyes scanning like they'd done this 1,000 times. Karen had called backup, and the worst part? I recognized them. Not their faces, but their stance, their posture, their silence. These weren't random men, these were trained. Ex-military, maybe even private contractors. One of them called out, "We just want to talk. Step outside." Locked the door, slid my son's bedroom window shut, and whispered to him, "Stay low, don't make a sound." Because I already knew. This wasn't just about a treehouse anymore. The knock on my front door wasn't a normal knock, it was sharp, deliberate, like a warning. My son clutched my arm, his eyes wide. "Dad, are they going to break in?" he whispered. I steadied my voice. "Not if I stop them." Through the blinds, I saw the men spread out, one by the SUV, one circling toward the backyard, and one standing firm on my porch. These weren't neighbors looking for trouble. They were moving in formation, covering angles. The man on the porch spoke again, louder this time. "We don't want your kid involved. Step outside and we'll settle this." I didn't answer. Instead, I reached under the hallway cabinet and pulled out a locked steel box. My son watched silently as I keyed it open. Inside lay my old service pistol, the one I'd retired with, and a flash drive I hadn't touched in years. I clipped the badge to my belt, holstered the pistol, and tucked the drive into my pocket. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from recognition, because the way those men moved, the way they positioned themselves, it wasn't random. It was the same training I used to drill into federal recruits, which meant Karen hadn't just called friends. She'd called people tied to something much bigger. I cracked the door open just an inch. "You boys know this is private property. Step off, or this becomes official business." The leader smirked, adjusting his jacket just enough for me to glimpse the outline of a weapon. "Official? Sheriff, you don't want this fight. Walk away and nobody has to know what's on that drive you carry." My blood ran cold. That drive. The one I thought nobody knew about. Behind me, my son whispered, "Dad, how do they know?" I didn't answer. I just looked the man dead in the eye and said, "You just made the worst mistake of your life. Because if they knew about the drive, then Karen wasn't working alone." The leader's smirk widened as he took a slow step forward. "You think this is about a treehouse, about some brat getting a scratch?" he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Karen was just the distraction. We want what you've been hiding. Hand over the drive and maybe we walk away."